another really exciting video for you today with an up-close look at the brand new stone drops from Nuvo. So I'm sure some of you probably saw some of the CHA shows on YouTube or the catalogue that Tonic put out saying that the stone drops were coming in April, and I'm sure you've all been excited about what they're going to be like and everything. But I've had so much fun working with these. They're really different. Like, I've never used anything like them before. They're really, really different. But I've had so much fun playing with them and finding out different ways of using them. And I'm going to go through what they're like. But if you want to know about all the other types of Nuvo drops that Tonic have brought out, I went through all of them at the beginning of my Dream Drop video, so I'll make sure to link that one below. And as well as showing you the stone drops now and some samples, there will be another video in my technique series showing you a swatch book with loads of different ideas of how you can use the stone drops as well. And I've used quite a lot of them in these cards too, but I'll do a separate video on the swatch book so that you can, I think it's good to have something you can just refer back to if you forget how to use something. So, there are 8 colours in the stone drop range. They come in the 30ml bottles. This is the same size, like same amount as you get in a regular Nuvo drop bottle, but they are different. If you see, the bottom is beveled, so they've really made them, they kind of look like a gemstone really, because they've got sort of given it that beveled look as if it's a cut stone, because they're stone drops. But they have a tapered bottle, and then that has the sort of narrower base as well. And another couple of things that are different is they have thick, sort of like chunky particles inside them which give them that stone texture. So they have a wider gauge nozzle than the regular Nuvo drops. You can see it's probably like double to triple the diameter of a nozzle. And then another thing, right, so if I show you this, this is just on the top. If I turn it 1, 2, and then a little bit more, that is now secure. But with the stone drops, because they've got a wider nozzle, more air can get into that. So they've added more screw thread to the bottle and the lid so that they keep them really airtight. So that's just resting on there, but if I turn it 1, 2, it's like 3 full turns until it's shut. So you just have to turn them a tiny bit more, but you know when it's shut because it doesn't turn anymore. But I just wanted to say that as well. You can kind of actually see on the bottle there, you can see there's 3 screw threads inside there, but there's like 4 screw threads inside this one. So it's just sort of one, almost another whole turn just to close them off properly. But that's just to make sure that they're definitely airtight because they've got a bigger hole in the nozzle. Yeah, so 8 different colours. There are chalk white, which is obviously a beautiful white colour and colours perfectly with your shimmer powders as well, which I will show you. Yeah, I've done it on one of the cards. You can colour any of the colours with your shimmer powders, but obviously if you wanted to create a colour that isn't within any of these, like for the cards I've done yellow and green, and I mean this is the closest to a green, so using the white you can really colour it to whatever colours you want. Then you have purple, which is obviously my favourite. This one's called Plum Slate. Then you have Lady Liberty, which I think is the best name ever because it looks like the Statue of Liberty colour. Then we have Fiery Volcano, which is a gorgeous red tone. And then I'm going to keep these ones separate and tell you the names of them. Belgium Bluestone, which is a gorgeous blue. Then we have a gold, which is called Gold Rush, which is a really lovely gold colour. Then we have the sort of silvery grey, which is called Boulder Grey, but it is more of a silver. And then we have this one, which is called Pink Granite as well. Okay, and the reason why I've separated these, I'll quickly show you on my swatch book actually. These ones are more glossy, these ones are more metallic. So if you notice a difference in the consistency, it's probably because one is glossy, one is metallic. There's only a tiny bit of difference, but you might notice and think one of your bottles has got something wrong with it, but it hasn't. It's just the different finishes of them. So if you look here, these four are metallic. So when you put them on black card, you can see the colour still really well, but these four, I mean the white is kind of opaque, so it does show on black, but those three in particular are gloss, which is the red, the Lady Liberty and the purple. So when you do them on black, you can't see the colour of the like suspension or like liquidy drop that they're in. You can only really see the colour of the lumpy bits that are in it to give that stone texture, obviously when you spread it out thinly. But so that's the difference with them really. So half of them are metallic, so you're seeing the actual colour on black even when you spread them out thinly, because they're you know, they're more opaque, and metallics always seem to show up on black. But these colours, they do show up on black if you do them thickly in a drop. But if you're doing techniques with them, when you do them thinly, they're in a more of a gloss medium, so they kind of, it mostly just shows the little particles that are inside it. I hope that makes sense. I mean, I don't really know if that's a big difference that anyone would be interested in, but I kind of found it interesting, so I thought I would share that. So yeah, so 8 colours. Trying to remember what I've already said. Yes, they have the bigger nozzle because the product's kind of like gritty. I'll show you with the pink. So if I just squirt some out onto my fingers, my bottles are getting quite empty because I've used so much of them. So when you look at them, it kind of just looks like a normal drop really, but when you start spreading it out, you can see that it's got all this sort of texture in it. It kind of, to me, you know, you get those like little tiny polystyrene balls that you can sort of mimic snow with. It's like a really, really tiny version of them, or I suppose it's almost like even smaller micro beads as well. I hope you can kind of see that texture in there. But there are different sizes of like gritty stuff. It's not grit, it's I think, I don't know, it's difficult to, it is hard, but it's really difficult to try and explain what's in it. But yeah, it's, you can see the texture. There's really tiny particles in there. You can see my fingerprint now. But yeah, there's really tiny particles inside it which give it that cool stone texture. But I don't think it is actually bits of stone. It's something synthetic that kind of mimics a stone look, I think. I mean, I don't know exactly what's in it, but you know. But yeah, when you're mixing, one of the ladies on the design team, Jen, she said she kind of ruined her Tim Holtz mat that came on her glass media mat because she was rubbing them a lot on the mat, and because of the gritty kind of texture, she ended up getting holes in it. So when I was mixing them, I was just using the backing sheet of double-sided adhesive, and that was fine. So when you're mixing stuff in with them, it's probably best just to work on something you can throw away, or some old packaging or something. Yeah, so what else do I need to tell you? Well, I suppose I'll quickly show you on this swatch book as well. So they have a bigger nozzle on them, but that doesn't mean that you can only make bigger blobs with them. So on these ones, I've done a fairly decent sized blob of them, but you can make small blobs. You just want to hardly put any pressure on the bottle. Make sure all the product is at the nozzle, hardly put any pressure, and you can get the tiny little drops with them. Don't think you can only make big drops. But if you didn't have the dexterity to create the smaller drops, just use a ball tool. So I was using this one, this size of a ball tool, which is probably like maybe 3mm, and I just dipped it into some of the product and then just dabbed it on and you get smaller dots as well. So say you wanted to follow your dot and drops dies from Tonic, you could just use a ball tool to apply it and get a smaller drop of it as well if you want to, or you can just use less pressure on the bottle and you can make smaller drops. Yeah, so I'll leave the rest of the technique-y things, like explaining them in detail, for my swatch book video. So I'll get on to the samples now. So I can't really remember what I've said, but I've probably been waffling on. But I'm going to show you my favourite one first. So I was mixing in the stone drops with some of the dream drops, and I think they work really, really well together. I think the contrast of the gritty texture with the iridescent finish of the dream drops works really nicely together. And so there's kind of two techniques on this card. So for the background, I'll just use this piece of the card to show you. So I took two pieces of card the same size, then I was using the Lady Liberty, the Chalk White and the Gold Rush, and I literally just took splodges of them and put different size drops all over the card. And then I came in as well with some of the Dragon Scales Dream Drops and added in a few drops of that as well. Then I took another piece of card, put it on top, pressed gently, not too firmly, and then quickly pulled them apart, and I got this cool dotty textured background. So you can see there, I wasn't pressing too firmly, so I still have the dot shapes on them, and you've got a few dream drop ones dotted in there as well. So that was how I created the background. Then for the focal element, which is my absolute favourite, I didn't film any of these cards because I've had so much to do. It's much quicker to make the cards without filming them, because obviously I haven't got to pay attention and figure out what order I'm filming stuff in so I don't get confused. But I think I will film this one. I think I will recreate it and film this one because I really, really love how this one turned out. So for the main element of this is I think it's called Oval Pansy from the Floral Aperture collection. This is the smaller of the little pansy flourishy dies. So I cut that out of white card, I stuck it to a piece of acetate, and then I flipped the acetate over and added my stone drops onto it. So it's kind of the same idea as the faux stained glass look with glitter, where you flood it with glue and then you put different colours of glitter on, but we're using the drops this time. So for the for some sections, like the smaller flowers and the interior pieces of the flowers, I just used the Gold Rush, but on this larger flower I added the Lady Liberty in the centre section and the Chalk White on the outside section, and then I came back in with this same, like about 3mm ball tool, and I swirled, so I just put this down so it touched the acetate, obviously on the back with all the gloopy stuff, and I just sort of swirled inside it, and it gave this really cool, like marbled sort of a look, which I really like. And then for two of the smaller flowers, I did it with the gold in the centre and the Lady Liberty on the outside, and the same up here as well for that one. And then for the leaves, to sort of give that difference and tie it in with the background and give a sort of a greeny tone, I used the Dragon Scales on the back of the leaves as well, just sort of swirling it around in a dotty motion, so it got a lot of reflectivity out of it. And then once that was dry, I just used the same colours of drops again to finish off the centres of the flowers. And to stick this down, once it's dry, the drops are like opaque. Obviously the dream drops aren't, because they're a translucent drop, but the stone drops are opaque, especially when you put them on thickly. So I just put some big blobs of PVA glue, or like, your Nuvo deluxe glue, behind the solid flowers and stuck that down, and then it just dried perfectly, and then I just added a little sentiment banner on it as well. But this is my favourite card that I've made with the stone drops. I really, really love how it turned out. So that's that one. Then let's do this one. So this is like my in the background, so when you're stenciling with these stone drops, they don't stencil thickly that well. Like, they go a little bit blobby and go underneath the stencil a little bit because of the, you're sort of moving around the thick texture and then the sort of thinner solution-y stuff that they're in, or like, I suppose it's kind of just like a normal Nuvo drop that they've put texture in. So the kind of, the droppy part of it can squidge underneath the stencil. But for this background, I mean, it did go a little bit splodgy in places, but if you apply it with your fingers, so you just put a few dots on the stencil and then come back in and just sort of rub it through the openings, the thicker parts just sort of catch in the outsides of the patterns, and then the thinner part is sort of inside the pattern, which I really like the look of. I'm not very good at explaining, but yeah, so that's how you can get a better stenciled look. And then for the main focal point of this card, this is the Floral Affections die sets, and I just mixed a couple of them together. And then I used the Belgian Bluestone in the background, then I used Lady Liberty on half the leaves, and I mixed in the apple green gloss Nuvo drops for the other half of the leaves. And then in the centre section I used that Boulder grey, and then while it was still wet I dotted in some of these disco ball silver confetti stars from Tonic as well. And then obviously once it was all dry I added on an identical die cut over the top to hide all the messy stuff, which is that's just like one of the techniques that I like doing a lot. So if you've watched a lot of my videos you'll have seen that technique a lot. And then I just added onto the card with some 3D foam as well. And for the accents, you know, I like doing my swirly Nuvo drops. It works perfectly with the stone drops as well. So that's the Belgian Bluestone on top of the Lady Liberty there. So they work perfectly too. Okay, then this one is another one of my favourites that I did. So if you saw my Dream Drops technique video, and if you've seen in the past my videos using glimmer paste and glitter accents, I like doing this thing where you take, I've got it's a bit dusty, it's been sitting up there for ages. This is a leftover from the Dream Drops shows that I did. So I took 2 pieces of acetate, I've splodged on some of the drops, imagine this is stone drops this time, splodged on some of the drops, then I took another piece of acetate, put it over the top and sort of squidged it around a bit, and then you pull them apart quickly and you get this texture within them, because obviously it's liquidy and then you've added friction to it and it's sort of pulled apart in a cool pattern. So that's exactly the same technique as I did here with the stone drops. So you can see that's the back of the acetate there, and I've actually used the front of the acetate as the main part of this card to give that texture. And then I've used a lot of the Mermaid collection of dies, part of one of the larger sets, and then the Little Mermaid that is inside the circle element. I cut her out, coloured her with alcohol pens, and then dabbed on some of the Plum Slate, yes, Plum Slate and the pink Granite to give her tail some texture. And then all of the sort of gold areas were cut out of a tan colour of card, and then I just patted on some of the Gold Rush stone drops onto that, and then I also just dotted in some tiny drops of Gold Rush as well between the areas. So that's got quite a few sort of techniques on that card, but I really like how that one turned out as well. You can see actually when I close the card you can see how translucent the acetate is, because you can see the black mat underneath there, and then when I shut it you can see, it's difficult to show on camera, but you can see through the acetate. So that's that one. Then this one is also using the technique of applying the stone drops through the stencil with your fingers, but obviously this one's onto black, and I used the pink Granite and the Boulder grey because they're both metallic colours. So that gave that kind of a look. And then for the behind the sentiment I just tapped on the same colours to another piece of this black card, just so they're all tied together. And for the small dots on this I used that technique of using the ball tool to create the tiny little dots as well. And even though you've done them quite thinly, you can hear that, they still have a texture to them because they're quite gritty, and when it makes a really cool noise when you have the stone drop on the ball tool and you push it down, it sort of goes crunch with all the little gritty bits that are in it. But you can really hear the texture that the stone drops give, and it doesn't come off either. I I've already sent off 3 of my samples, but I did film some footage with them before I sent them. So I will put that in after I finish these, but one of them I did a watercolour-y effect in the background with the stone drops. I can't remember if I said it in the bit of footage, but because you're thinning out the drops, you're kind of thinning down the binder that's keeping all the little dotty pieces like stuck down. So when you thin the drops down like that, do expect some of it to shed off when it's dry. It doesn't all come off though. It does stay, and you'll see that in the other bit of footage. But I just wanted to say, when it's dry, if some of it does come off, that's normal, because you've messed with the consistency of it, so you're going to expect that the binder's not going to work and stick it all down. But anyway, so another card. This one is showing adding embossing powder onto them. So I used some of the chalk white and some of the plum slate, and I spread it through a stencil thickly, which actually wasn't too splodgy on this one, and then I added some dots of the stone drop as well, and then in a few places I sprinkled on some purple embossing powder. It was the one that came out in the Dream in Colour collection, and then I heated it, and it really bubbled. Like, you can really tell on the Nuvo drops, on the stone drops, because these were perfect little drops, but after adding embossing powder to them and heating them, they kind of look like raisins now, because they've sort of puffed up with the heat and then sunken back down again. But it gives a different look. It's maybe not that pretty, but I wanted to leave it in because, it gives you a different look that you can do. So that's using embossing powder on them. Then what I was saying before about the chalk white colour and colouring it, this one, I did it as a shaker card, but that is chalk white in the background. That yellow to green ombre is all chalk white drops, and I had a piece of, the backing paper. I splodged out 3 drops of this. I put Solar Flare shimmer powder in one, I put Falling Leaves shimmer powder in another, and I put Green Parade in the last one. Then I mixed them, mixed the powder into the drop in their little pile, and then I took a brayer and picked up all 3 colours together and then brayered it on, and then I turned the card around and brayered it that way. So you get the ombre from yellow to green to darker green and back again. It gives a patchy look, but I really like that kind of a look. It kind of looks like worn paint or something, and you can't feel it on this card, but you could leave it exposed so you could feel that cool texture as well. But I just made it into a shaker card using those butterflies from the Woodland Walk collection. And then finally, my final card, other than the 3 that I will insert the footage of in a second, this one again was mixing in dream drops with them too. You can see that iridescent look, and for this one all I did was I put drops of the 2 different colours of stone drops, which was the chalk white and the pink granite, and then Love Potion dream drops, and I just splodged them down like that. And then I took like an old business card or an old gift card, and you can see it's the exact length here, and I just pressed down hard and dragged it across, and then I did the same on the other side and dragged it across that way to give a different look as well. And then for the sentiment I tapped some of the chalk white onto the white one just to give it some texture, and for the drops I put a swirl of dream drop on top of a blob of chalk white stone drop, and they work really nicely on top of each other. Kind of looks like some kind of jewel or fossil or something stuck in a stone, and it gives that iridescent finish still. So that was the last sample of these, but I'll now put in the footage of 3 more of them, and then I'll come back and finish the video. So I'm filming this little bit before the bit of video you've just seen, just because I wanted to show these cards as well before I send them off. So I've done 3 more with the stone drops. This one was putting, let me get you the names. So this was Pink Granite, Plum Slate and Fiery Volcano, and I just put a dollop of each of them onto one of the Nuvo silicone spatulas, and I literally just squished it across the card, and then I flipped it around and did the same thing with 3 more drops of it, and it just gives a really cool textured look because of that gorgeous grittiness of the stone drops. And then to finish it off I just added that birthday girl sentiment and a few of the chalk white drops straight on top of it, just to tie in the white, and I thought doing a white sentiment on top of it really brought in the white from all of the white space that's on the outside of the card. So there's that one. Then for this one I took Lady Liberty, Belgian Bluestone, the Plum Slate, the Fiery Volcano and the pink Granite, and I did a kind of a rainbow effect. And for this all I did was splodge out a few drops onto the card of each of the colours in strips, and then I literally just dabbed it around with my finger just to cover the background. And you can see there that metallic-y of the pink, and then the kind of more gloss effect of the red, because 4 of the colours, I'll probably have explained this in the first bit of the video, but 4 of the colours have a more glossy finish, and 4 of them have more of a metallic finish. But then I just used this gorgeous heart dye over the top and added on some of the chalk white stone drops to the centre of the flowers, and I used Lady Liberty and the Belgian Bluestone on 2 different parts of the sentiment as well, just to tie that colour down to the bottom of the card. So that's that one. And then finally I've filmed a video for this one, so you should be able to see the whole process behind this card as well. But I thought the gold colour, Gold Rush, and the chalk white, I thought using them together would make a perfect sand because they're really nice and textured. So I did a sort of underwater scene, and I actually used the Belgian Bluestone and the Lady Liberty and watered them down and then painted them on to the background. Because you're watering them down, some of the little chunky bits that are in the stone drops do drop off once it's dry, just because, you know, there's not enough of the medium around them to keep them stuck to the card, but majority of them have stayed on, which is really great. So I did the washy background, then I squirted out the Gold Rush and the chalk white and patted it on the bottom, and it really looks like sand. It's a really cool textured effect. And then I took the Lady Liberty and just drew on a few bits of seaweed, and then I tapped on the Lady Liberty to the Make a Splash sentiment, and I also tapped on some of the Gold Rush to the shells on this piece. And this was the Oceans of Love die from the Mermaid collection, and I just snipped off some of the fishes. This is one of the corners from one of the Mermaid sets, and that's the small sentiment from the Mermaid collection. And then I used the Belgian Bluestone with a little bit of Lady Liberty just sort of dotted on top to create like little bubbles. So I just wanted to add these 3 cards in as well, because I was going to send these ones off earlier than when I'll have all the other ones finished by. So yeah. I'm sure I'll end the video in the other bit of footage, so bye. Hi, I'm back again. I forgot to show this card in my Stone Drops up close video. I showed it in the embossing folder video and then completely forgot to show you in the Stone Drops video. So this is the cool grouting effect, where I splodged on some Boulder Grey and some Belgian Bluestone. Then I took like an old gift card and scraped it over the top of a debossed image, and it picks up all the, like, it fills in all the areas and gives you a cool texture to your debossed images. So I just wanted to quickly show you that one as well. Okay, so I hope you like those other 3 cards as well. I can't remember what I said in that part of the video, but yeah, I hope you enjoyed watching this up close look at the brand new Stone Drops from Nuvo and Tonic, and I hope you enjoyed seeing these examples of them. And make sure, well, this will probably be up after they've been out on CRaFTi, but hopefully you'll have been watching CRaFTi and got some more inspiration from all the other amazing ladies on the design team who have created loads of cool cards using these products as well. Yeah, so thank you for watching, and don't forget there will be a techniques video showing you loads of different techniques that you can do with the Stone Drops too, so make sure to check that out, and I'll try and link it below. So thank you for watching, bye!